don't you introduce yourself, Cece?
So my name is Cece. I'm an enrolled member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. And the Sault Ste. Marie tribe is located in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So it's fairly isolated, but the Sioux, as we like to call it, is actually a twin city. There's a city in Michigan, and a short drive over the International Bridge, there's an identical city in Ontario. Because back in the day, we weren't separated by an international border, and our tribe lived and thrived on both sides of the river. But now there's an international border there. So I currently live in the lower peninsula of Michigan in a small town called Traverse City. I began working in the domestic violence field early in my career. And of course, due to some life changes and location changes, I stepped away from that field for almost 2 decades. But I always found myself wanting to come back to it because I just personally have a drive and something within me that wants to help people. And I really feel like I get to do that with the field that I'm in. So in February of this year, I was hired as the Strong Hearts communications manager, and I got back into it. So that's just a little recap on me.
It's a weird field to choose. I like domestic violence. I'm going to work here. No, I understand your big heart and that desire to help, but domestic violence and domestic violence awareness and the month and all that, it's such a complicated personal thing that throughout United States history, it's between them, so you really, these words of abuse have only been kind of coming out the past 30-ish years, I feel like, because before you didn't call the cops on your neighbor. You didn't, it was, even the cops looked at domestic violence as an in-house family matter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. We did the recording for our panel discussion that we're putting out next week. And that was one of the topics of how has the field of domestic violence changed within the last 30 years, the positives and the negatives. And one of the positives was definitely just awareness and being able to talk about it and being able to have those conversations with your friends, with your relatives, with your neighbors, within the greater Native community. It was definitely not something that was being widely talked about in the 30 years ago, and there just wasn't an awareness like there is now, and especially with social media within the last 10 years has just really exploded the conversation. So in that aspect where I feel like we're really moving forward, just being able to openly talk about that this thing exists, it's not good, how do we fix it?
Well, there's a lot of abuse. There's a lot of types of abuse. I thought that if somebody hit you, that was the thing that was abuse. But I also tolerated all kinds of weird, subtle psychological things that I didn't even have words for, like gaslighting, like cultural abuse. Things like that. I just accepted as that's reality.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate, and I'm sorry that happened to you, but that's not a healthy relationship. Healthy relationships don't include that type of psychological aggression and emotional abuse. And like you said, I think that people do, like the slapping, the hitting, the punching, all of that is very easy to identify as physical abuse. And sometimes with those things, there can be, black eyes, broken bones, there can be all of those really obvious physical indicators. But like you said, what people don't necessarily see is like the emotional abuse, the cultural abuse, financial abuse. And now, like I earlier mentioned, social media, digital abuse is really becoming a lot more prominent as well. And so I think another thing that people I guess another barrier that we would like to kind of break down is that domestic violence doesn't just occur between a man and a woman in a married relationship. You know what I mean? There is such a thing as dating violence. It can happen between two men, two women in a polyamorous relationship. It can happen where people are living together, not living together. If they share children, it can, it can occur in any of those situations. And so that's another thing that I think that people don't necessarily realize. So when we talk about those other types of abuse besides the physical violence, we also talk about how those things are usually layered, right? So there's usually like emotional abuse and cultural abuse and physical abuse. So like the abuser isn't just using one tactic to gain power and control. They're layering all of these manipulative tactics to gain that power and control. And at the end of that, cycle, or not cycle, that at the end of that is physical violence. So it is really hard to unlayer all of those and unpack all of those and really understand what people are going through. And I do want to talk about gaslighting. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because
I didn't know it was a term. And you talk about abusive relationships. You can also be abused by a family member, gaslighted, right, manipulated, and so I never had a term for the way that person made me feel and would fight everything that I said,
right. And yeah, so let's break. That's great. I mean, so let's, and I've done a lot of these interviews and things like that. And
don't brag away.
No. Well, and it's just always it's like, we don't really get to gaslighting. So this is cool. This is good. And I think that this is really good information to get out there, because if gaslighting can be done so well that to the victim, it makes the victim think that they are crazy. So gaslighting is basically where an abuser refuses to acknowledge their actions or role in the abuse. And they can say things like, if you say, hey, you did X, Y, and Z, they'll say, are you sure? You tend to forget things a lot. Or I don't think that's really what happened. Here's what happened, A, B, C. And so then you're like, oh, well, maybe I don't remember it right. Or maybe that's not what they meant. Or, oh, maybe I'm being too sensitive. No. That's gaslighting. And they are doing that to you. And so it's super subtle. And a lot of people, I think, they feel like something's not right, but they can't put their finger on it.
Yeah, there's no word to describe this person talking you out of your reality.
Right. But yes, they don't have the vocabulary, but we know it as gaslighting now.
Yes. Yeah. So that term is really only a few years old to me, but has really helped put some people in perspective. Like, this is a form of abuse. This is a cruel behavior to inflict on another human. Right. And it could be layered with cultural abuse. Or why do you want to go to that boring powwow? Or, you just went to one, or weird things. Gaslighting it is frightening because it is so normal conversation.
It's insidious, right? It's like they don't, like you might not recognize it right away. And like you said, now that you've had space and time away from that, you're like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah. So usually the old term was just an a-hole, but now we can say gaslighter. Yeah. So fiscal abuse, that's a new one to me too. I didn't imagine that somebody could abuse you by withholding or manipulating through finances.
Yeah. So that one also can be really subtle, or it can be really blatant. That can be layered again with a little bit of emotional abuse or gaslighting, saying, maybe at the beginning of the relationship and you're talking about finances and maybe combining households or something like that. And one of the partners says, hey, I'll take care of everything. Don't worry about it. I've got everything under control. And, you're not very good with numbers, but I am. So I'll take over that part. And they kind of make you believe that it's just going to be easier and better that way. Well, then, maybe 6 months down the road, you're like, hey, how are we on finances? Can I, should we buy a new coffee maker or something like that? And then the other partner's like, no, we're good, but no, we don't buy the new coffee maker. So they're not allowing you access to finances or money. They kind of keep things secretive so they can control all of that. And that's just one example. Another example, oh, I'll hold on to your debit card for you because you don't want to lose it. And I can take care of it for you. And then they won't give it back to you so that you can go, buy necessities or take care of yourself or, so there's just different ways that can also manifest itself.
And is that an illegal thing? So you notice these things. What does Native Strong Heart Helpline, how can they help somebody process this stuff? Because it does feel whiny. 911, my husband won't give me my ATM card. You feel like weak reaching out for some of these more subtle types of abuse. So what do you guys offer? And then how is it different amongst our Native communities?
Well, let's talk about Strong Hearts real quick first. So Strong Hearts is a free, anonymous, and culturally appropriate helpline for Native people who are affected by domestic and dating violence and sexual violence. We're open daily from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Central Time. We have a phone number and a website, and I'll give those real quick. So our phone number is 1-844-762-8483. And then we have a website where you can chat online with like a direct message window with an advocate. And it's a real advocate. It's not like a little robot or anything. So you're really talking to a real person, but you're able to reach out either on your computer, your phone, or tablet, however you do that. And our website is really easy too. It's just strongheartshelpline.org. So.
But you're also on social medias too.
Yes, we are on social media. We don't provide any support through social media. So if you try to message through Facebook, that page isn't monitored.
But the phone numbers are there and things like that. Like if you can't remember anything, you can Facebook it and follow those contacts.
Right, exactly. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you just search Strong Hearts DV on any of those, we'll pop right up. So.
And how long you guys have been at this for a while, the organization? It's not new.
Right. Right. So our organization came about when the National Domestic Violence Hotline and the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center began having conversations back in 2012. And so they worked together and developed a concept for a Native hotline, developed by and run by Native advocates to support tribal communities across the U.S. So they worked together for several years, and their vision became a reality when we were born. Yep, those were air quotes for those of you on the radio that couldn't see that.
Because radio CC, but knock yourself out, honey. Air quote away. Yeah.
So Strong Hearts was born in March 2017. So we've been around for a few years and we are continuing to grow.
Yeah, the hours have extended. I've noticed that, each and every conversation throughout the past couple years, there's something newer, bigger, or wider. So right. you guys aren't stopping at what you're trying to birth, right. Grow a monster.
Yeah, well, we are growing to fit the need, quite honestly. It's out there. So we have to grow and expand to keep up with that. So this year we added that chat service that I was talking about. We also added sexual violence advocacy, and we're looking to, within the next few months, add text advocacy, and we are looking to go 24/7. So We're looking for applicants for advocates, advocate supervisors, an IT manager. We're looking to really build up our staff so we can go 24/7.
Now, as a Native woman, throughout the past couple hundred years and the way things have been run, I know that I come from a matriarchal society, yet here I am put in a society where I'm forced to play a passive role and accept these things. And you keep talking about dating violence. Does that mean if somebody buys you dinner, do you have to put out? Because I'm always the one buying dinner because I won't.
I think that's up to each person. I'm gonna just leave that one there. It's up to what you're comfortable with. But that does lead me into, thinking about coercion and sexual coercion, and that being a tactic of abuse also. So that, again, like gaslighting, can be really subtle. And so coercion is, an example would be, that your partner wants to have sex or something of that nature along those lines, and you don't want to, but if you don't, that it's going to be a huge fight later. So you don't want to, but you go along with it just to avoid the fight. So that's sexual coercion. It's not, you're not saying no necessarily.
No, there's a consequence.
Right.
Your no. There's a no.
Right. And so that's an example of sexual coercion, and that can be a part of domestic or dating violence, or it can be on its own as well.
But the perspective, like I was surprised at how recent, and some laws are still intact, that you cannot rape your wife.
Yeah. Yep,
and so there's still the perspective of, if you go on a date with the guy, then you're asking for it, or there's an you know what I'm saying? There's still that weird perspective that you have to do A, B, C, D, because if anything happens, nobody will believe you anyways. Because you had a red dress on.
Yeah, I understand where that perspective is coming from, but again, we really empower people, and communication is very important when you go on those dates. And it might be awkward to be so upfront when you're dating, but it'll really save a lot of miscommunication down the road.
Well, I always drive my own car, pay for my own stuff. Like I was already social distance dating, before it was. But it is true. And to teach our sisters, daughters, that they don't owe anybody anything.
Right.
Because taking control back of your body, sexual violence is a tactic used for thousands of years throughout all conquerors. So for some reason, women in control of their bodies is kind of this new concept in the long scheme of timeline,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Colonization itself just, did a lot of damage, is currently doing a lot of damage, is currently happening. And I think that some of those rooted stereotypes are really hard to push back against. Especially if you were brought up a certain way. And I think now it's becoming a little bit more acceptable to be, socially acceptable, I should say, to be yourself and communicate and be upfront with people and present yourself in that way.
it's weird out there. And then everything too, digitalized, you talk about digital abuse, but you see what that person wants you to see on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So I am terrified of it. Unless I know you or am referred to you, I don't communicate with people online because I don't know I have no idea who they are. And this day and age, everybody has access to you in a weird way. And then everybody has an opinion. So this digital violence, this bullying really does. I've seen people just bully artwork, native artwork.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people bully, you're native enough, you're too native. There really is that. And I just thought we had to accept it. That's just part of the internet world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's unfortunate that happens. Yeah.
Well, it
I
doesn't
mean,
happen to me because I don't put anything on the internet,
yeah, I mean, it's I mean, I'm grasping for words because it's such a big problem.
Yes.
And
And a new problem type of thing. It's a new thing.
And it's interesting because the online bullying can happen to also, like domestic violence, dating violence, and sexual violence. It doesn't matter your age, your ethnicity, your socioeconomic status. I mean, this internet bullying can happen to anyone who is online and who isn't online, you know? It's just such a huge problem.
But do you guys, is it, again, it feels, and I'm from the era, of boarding school, grandma and stuff like that. So I'm of the era that you don't involve anybody in your stuff. So reaching out for help is a new concept for me. So I guess that's what I want people to do, is encourage them that, yes, if this feels weird, you have people to talk to about it.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And that's a good way of saying it. If it feels off, you can talk to someone, and you don't have to, talk to a close relative where you think that they're not going to understand, or you don't have to talk to a friend. Like, we're here to be that neutral sounding board for you in, relationship questions that feel off. So what I like to say, when somebody calls us, our advocates are amazing people. They are they have a natural ability, and they are very well trained, so that when you talk to them, it feels like you're talking to your favorite auntie, or it feels like you're talking to your grandma, and like they just get it. They're not judging you. They understand where you're coming from. They understand, the native culture. So it can be awkward at the beginning to put yourself out there. But once you get into that call and start chatting with them, it just feels really comfortable.
But if my nephew came to me and said, someone doesn't like my Facebooks or whatever, I would tell him just to get over it, stop whining. But these people can be cruel, and in a way, you don't have a way to distance yourself from them. It's not like, oh, I'm going home or I'm leaving the park. It's a weird, different thing. And like you said, everybody is online, and everybody's so dependent online. So if that place isn't safe anymore, then what?
Right. Yeah. I think preteens and teens are definitely growing up in a world that was different from mine.
I bully you to your face. That's what I would do. So
I mean, I hope not, but I'm 40, and I remember, like, when the internet became a thing, like my senior year of high school, to be honest, and so the preteens and teens now that are growing up and into this world it's a very difficult landscape for them to navigate with the online bullying. But they also, I mean, they're doing really well. You know, they're really adaptable. I just read something a couple days ago that they were in the article. They were saying that they, at the beginning of the pandemic, they expected preteens and teens to not handle it as well, you know, and have a lot of difficulties with the sudden changes that were happening. Well, now they just reevaluated and they're like, oh, they're doing way better than we thought they would, because they've also been doing this technology thing since they were born, you know.
And I was born in 82, so you were just a super nerd if you were on the internet.
Yeah.
It was like for gaming or for pornography. So why did I need the internet?
Yeah.
I was raised, nobody cares what you ate. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and they're doing good, but they are under a different kind of stress and pressure than what we grew up with, for sure.
I believe it. Well, being 80s babies, you and I were kind of born into a more pro-women world that our moms and grandmas had to fight for.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like as a woman and as an ethnic woman, I knew that I could do stuff, but there was still but you can only go this far. You know, you're welcome into the workforce, but you're never going to be a CEO. You know what I'm saying? Like that weird kind of subtleties that we want you, but not all the way.
Yeah, that's interesting.
When you're getting gaslighted by your country. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, and I think obviously you and I we grew up obviously in different households and were told and raised differently.
Yes.
I definitely was raised with the parents that were like, oh, you can be president someday if you just work hard enough. And it's like, when you get to be, 20, you're like, oh, I'm never going to be president. You know what I mean? Like, but like, I definitely had those parents that were like, you can do anything, and I did watch a lot of media that basically said that same thing too, and yeah.
We're not there. Well, there's a lot. And I think that's why Strong Hearts Native Helpline is so important, because there's these weird cultural subtleties that as Indigenous North American people that not everybody can relate to. So I feel like in my life, I have to explain my history, my this, my that, all my this before I can get to what's bugging me. But when you're talking to natives directly, you don't have to give a backstory. You can just say, I feel this, or I've experienced this. And that's so huge and so comforting that you're not on guard to give here's my native resume.
Right. And I think that's a good point too, that, within our current society, there's perhaps this almost like you're giving a justification for existing. And, when you call Strong Hearts Native Helpline, you don't have to do that. We get it. We understand. We're here to listen. We're here to help. We're here to, just be a sounding board for you. So it's different when a Native person calls a Native helpline. There's a layer that you don't have to go through.
Well, you nailed it, I think, with the justify yourself, because I've even been on hold with the cable company. And as we were on hold, somebody, oh, where are you from? No. And then suddenly, oh, you're Choctaw. And then while I'm on hold with this tech, he wanted me to just tell him everything. It was like, because he was still shocked we're here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that kind of thing that I can imagine somebody wanting help and happening to justify and go through before, or you forget what was even bugging you in the first place because you are exhausted from just justifying your existence.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to do that when you call Strong Hearts.
And you guys do regional resources? Like
Yes.
if I am in Arizona or Delaware?
Right. Yeah. So, there's 574 tribes in the US, and there's only about 60 some tribal shelters across the US. Yeah. So that's a huge disparity. However, our database is kept current. We have a couple staff members, like that's their entire job, is to find these resources, keep all of the resources in our database current. So, if you are, we service Alaska and Hawaii too. I mean, so all 50 states, all over. If you call us and you're in Florida and you're, a tribal member from Michigan, we can still help you. We can still help you find resources in your area in Florida. Whatever you want. So that's another service, and that's another thing that we're here to help people with, is to hook them up with those services that can help them. And even if there isn't a tribal or native centered resource in the area, we can still offer a non native centered resource, and just we would definitely let the caller know or the chatter know, hey, this isn't, but this is also in your area, and kind of just walk them through that process.
That's awesome. And so I want to talk about getting over, I had a drunk neighbor and I would hear violence, and I never called the cops and I never bugged them because it's not my business, quote unquote. How can we reach out to people to let you know what I'm saying? Like, what's a weird, subtle way that if you see things, I have a friend, and that weird, subtle fiscal abuse and weird little things I see, but it's not my place, so how can we be better advocates for those who are abused without sounding all judgy?
I'm again, you're bringing out some really good topics. We take at Strong Hearts Native Helpline, we take calls from people who want to help their neighbors and who want to help their friends and nieces and nephews and things like that. So, in those cases, the two situations that you just described are two totally different situations too. So we encourage people who are even just trying on the outside of the relationship, just trying to help the person. So we encourage those types of calls to Strong Hearts as well, because, we can help that person talk through what could be the best case scenario for that, and try to figure out, more information, and just try to help strategize with that person. That would be a good way for them to help.
Yeah, because if you come across judgy, then that person won't reach out to you. But at the same time, you care about that person, so you don't, and I don't need your organization because I'm the abuser. So, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, well, that brings up another good point. And we do take calls from people who are questioning their own behavior.
That's awesome.
So if something doesn't feel right on that end, also, we definitely want you to reach out.
Or if you feel like your angering issues are exploding, or you're not content with the way you're behaving in a relationship.
Right. We definitely take calls on that end of the spectrum also.
That is huge.
Because domestic violence, we have to, it's a multifaceted issue. And so, in order to address the problem, you have to look at all facets of it. And so you definitely want to keep those lines of communication open. So we take calls from anyone about relationship violence.
Because I didn't know if I would just door to door with a pamphlet like, hi, I heard you guys had a rough night. Here's here's a magnet with the phone number.
Yeah. And
or it makes me want to beat that guy for beating on his wife. It's just, it's a weird place.
It is. And I'm sorry that you had to experience that, because that is really hard.
I just moved, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people have had an experience where they've witnessed something and didn't know how to react. And again, making the first move can always feel a little bit awkward. But once you do, it really opens up the conversation. We like to say, we're here to walk beside victim survivors.
Aww.
So we're not here to judge, like you say. We're here to walk beside you to get you to a safe place, wherever that may be. So I think, the two situations that you described, just based on the information that you gave me, maybe if this ever happens again, maybe watch and see and wait for an opportunity to talk to your neighbor and the partner who you felt was, being the victim, and wait till they're alone and just say, hey, is everything okay? That might open up everything, or it might not.
Yeah.
And, it might be the beginning of something. We have had examples of, neighbors looking out for each other, especially during COVID right now, where it's like, okay, if you see my light on during the day, that means that I'm in danger. Can you please call the police? Or if the light is on, everything's fine. So there's just a lot of different things that you can work with and can do to subtly signal, and to help that person. And again, those are strategies and tactics that if you call our helpline, an advocate could help you think of and work out.
It's amazing, because it is hard when people are in an abusive relationship, the shame, the stuff that keeps them stuck there because they don't want to admit, oh, everything's fine. Everything's fine. I had a friend in high school. Everything's fine. We pick her up middle of the night, black eye, bloody nose. 3 days later, she's at his house again. Mm-hmm. So it's exhausting too, in a way, being an advocate, because you love somebody and you're there for them. Yet now it feels like you're complicit in letting them run back. I don't know. It's very complicated and multi-layered. So I appreciate that you guys aren't just there for victims, but you're there for us big-hearted folks too, that want to stop any pain they see in the world. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know I could call and be like, yo, I'm watching this. I didn't know that I could do that. I thought it was only for victims of this violence. So that's awesome. I have a long list. Okay. That's an A. We got this going on.
Yeah. Well, let me give you that phone number one more time. It's 1-844-762-8483 daily from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And like we say, I'm sorry, what?
Website?
Yep. The website is strongheartshelpline.org. And like we say, you can call us if you're in the relationship, if you're not in a relationship, if you have questions about your own behavior. Like I said, we take calls from anyone.
That is huge, because healthy people start healthy families, and healthy families beget healthy communities, and so on and so forth. So this is a huge resource that will hopefully start to dismantle these abusive cycles. Because again, generational trauma, ABCD. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that people abuse, and there's a lot of reasons that people take abuse. But the fact that there's a phone that you can talk about it, that's right. Huge.
Right.
And how can people help? How can people help the helpline?
Yeah. And like we said at the beginning, it's a multifaceted issue that takes a lot of resources and a lot of helpers out there. So another way that we say that you can help is obviously like and follow us and share posts on social media, because perhaps one of your friends that is in a relationship might see that you shared and liked us, and they get curious. And so the more that we can spread our message that we exist and we're here to help, will help, it'll reach the right people and they will reach out to us. So, follow us and like us on social media, sign up for our e-newsletter. We put one out every month. And that just talks about, the current events that are happening within the field of domestic violence awareness. So it's, just educating one's self is a great way to be a helper.
What about volunteers and donations? Do you guys accept either of those?
Yeah, so we do accept donations. We don't have a donations link on our website. Our donations go through the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. So if you visit the niwrc.org, on their donations page, you can select Strong Hearts and you can make a donation that way. And then what was your second question? I'm sorry. Volunteers.
Yes.
We currently don't have a volunteer program. So again, there are different ways to volunteer within your community. And we actually have a really good blog on our website at strongheartshelpline.org, a really good blog right now about volunteering and how people can help. So I really encourage people to check that out as well. It does give resources on there about planning events in your own community and different things like that you can do.
Well, everybody's been impacted by abuse or family member impacted by abuse. And we've all seen the domino effect of abuse that leads into more abuse and a drug addiction and the whole impact of this stuff. So even though you're focusing on this, I feel like the ripple effect benefits so far down the line, with these bigger systemic problems that we face as communities. So yay, Native Strong Hearts Helpline.org. Did I get it right? Or because what was
you got it a little twisted, but let me help you. It's Strong Hearts Native Helpline, and our website is strongheartshelpline.org.
Yay. Well, this is a big deal, and I totally support you guys. And whenever there's a Domestic Violent Awareness Month or a Stop Being a Jerk Month or something, we'll get you guys back on air and keep the conversation going.
Yes, and thank you so much for your work in helping us spread this very important message.
It's awkward and depressing, but that's what I guess I do as Native radio. Wah, wah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of hope out there too, and resiliency. We are still here, and it's important to remember that, and important to have these discussions, because keeping the lines of communication open are important to solving these problems.
Agreed. Well, I appreciate your time, and you guys keep in touch, and anything and everything, feel free to tag Resilience Radio if there's something important I need to share to keep these discussions going, because in this, they don't get out at the first time. It takes multiple times to break these ingrained patterns. So the more we can do to help them finally break away is a big deal. So go team.
We're glad to have you on our team. Thank you.
All right. We'll call that the end. This will air tomorrow, 10 a.m.-ish, 10:04-ish. Okay. On KVMR. And then Liz has the links, or I'll send you the links. And then are you on, if I friend you on Facebook, I can tag you in the announcement post.
Yeah, that sounds great. We'll get it up on our socials all day tomorrow too.
Yay. And then, people can listen live and archive. So this can get shared around for like 2 weeks. Okay. And I don't even know if I looked at Liz's talking points. Sorry, Liz.
I looked at them a little bit.
Yeah, like statistics. I don't know. I just figure 100% of women get screwed over at some point.
Well, yeah, it's that, those statistics can be a little bit overwhelming too.
So, well, yes. And I feel that the emotional side and the heartfelt side is really what is going to open people, not saying 23,000 women every 2 seconds, or, that's just starts to feel like information when this is a heart problem.
Right. Well, and it's, that's a really good point too, because people hear numbers, they'll hear 80% of Native women have been a victim, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's like, that happens to other people. I don't know anybody, you know what I mean? And so like, I think that is important in a certain context, but also making it about people that you know, and with your examples of like living next door to somebody who's going through it. And I mean, I think that is important, and that is a very important connection for people. So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
Well, yeah, because just because it's not happening to you doesn't mean you don't see people, and maybe in the future with you or with somebody else, we can talk about what does a healthy relationship look like?
Mm-hmm.
What does mutual respect look like? Because a lot of generational trauma families don't know what that means.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, we do. That's a good point. And that could be a great topic for February, because February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. And like, we talk about healthy relationships a lot.
So what does that look like? What does somebody respecting your opinion look like? What is actually listening to somebody look like? What does, because again, I'm not dating because I live in the mountains and everybody has man buns, but
wait, I gotta ask you something. Did Liz send you the article about mask fishing?
No.
Have you heard about this?
No.
She sent it to me last week and I was laughing so hard. Apparently there's this thing on dating apps now where people will wear their masks to show that they're being like a conscientious citizen, but if it's the only picture on a dating app, then it's considered mask fishing, like catfishing, because people are more attractive if you just see a third of their face. And so like if they take the mask off for a date and they're like ugly or whatever, then they like mask fished you instead of catfished you or whatever. It's like this whole like phenomenon that's only come about because of COVID.
I love how we do this to ourselves as a society. You just find more ways to make it worse. Dating's hard. COVID's hard. Let's just make them shitty together.
So my one employee is dating right now. I think she's in her early 20s, and she's like, it was bad before COVID and it is rough out there right now.
I'm back to like Yenta at this point, matchmaker.
I'm like,
you know what I mean?
Even date during this, like that's gotta be. I can't imagine. I've been married forever, so
good.
Oh.
Good. No, I keep hoarding pets, and that's fine with me.
My best friend isn't married, and she's not dating. She's like, no, I'm good. It's rough out there.
Well, and I feel okay. So I'm 40. So a few more years, I can actually find a guy whose kids are like 20 and out the house.
Right.
So totally skip the whole "you're not my mom" thing, like.
Yeah. So it's just a waiting game for you. It's a numbers game at this point.
A few more years, like he's already divorced and he's just waiting for his little crap kids to get out the house, and then.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe he's a couple of years older too. And he's money. I mean, I get it, but.
No, it's already weird. COVID made it weirder. And then that's the thing too. And here we are crammed in these terrible situations, quarantine with people who may be abusers. So that, this conversation has to happen.
It's so bad. Yeah, I really feel for those people that are stuck, with their abusers right now with no.
Well, and kids stuck at home schooled with, an alcoholic parent or an away. I can't think about it too much because I get all, panic attack, but there's so much to pray for.
I mean, yeah. And we could, honestly, you and I could probably have a 8-hour conversation just about domestic violence in COVID. I mean, it's just really bad. I just read an article too about, there was this is so bad. This is so upsetting. But a little girl was in her Zoom class and she was being sexually assaulted in this Zoom class. So other students could see it. The teacher could see it. These kids were asking what's going on. And so the teacher's trying to like get everybody to log off. She's on the phone to 911. Like I just get chills. Like I just was sick reading that. I'm like, and apparently like in the rest of the article, they were saying that this had been happening to this little girl for quite some time. And so you wonder too, with these kids that are doing the Zoom classes, like how much a teacher is really able to observe things in a way, you know, that they aren't if the kid was in the class, you know what I mean? So it's very stressful, and especially for people like you and I who care about other people.
Yes. You
know, take that on, you know, and it feels overwhelming at times, but I don't know. That's the other thing I think about too. Do you think, you know, once COVID is over, whenever, God forbid that may be, do you think that we will ever be able, like people like you and I, be able to go back to normal? And or have we become so hyper aware and sensitive and empathetic that we're always going to have to grapple with that?
Always.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid of.
Always.
I was hoping you were going to tell me, no, Cece, everything's going to be fine.
There's hope in coping skills and stuff, but we hit a new frequency now. So how do you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really good way of putting it.
So I have so many babies to save. My God. It's like overwhelming. And then I don't know if I use a machete or a machine gun. I don't know. All right, you have a wonderful day.
Bye.